So the protein pages, or aggregated views of proteins, are composed of a number of different sections. The first section contains summary information. Apart from the summary information, it also contains two different ways how you can navigate through the web page. The navigation bar contains names of the individual sections, as well as on the bottom of the section you can see icons. Not only you can use those icons on the navigation bar for navigating through the pages, but it also gives you immediate information about the aggregated data we actually have for the particular protein. So for example, here you can see that we have a different PDB structures which are mapped to the protein of interest, 81 different ligands, as well as 8 different interaction partners, 3 functional annotations, and roughly 400 different papers which are referring this protein of interest. The summary information given for the protein includes the protein name, organism of origin, as well as biological function, all coming from UniProt. In case the protein under question is an enzyme, we link to Brenda database through this link. If there are any known diseases which are related to the protein of interest, we link to UniProt through the icon provided. The second and probably the most interesting part of the page contains web component which maps all different PDB chains which are mapped to different sections or segments of the protein of interest. Let's have a look how this component works in a greater detail. If you mouse over the top of the component, you can see the help text, which gives you the brief overview of the functionality and the data behind the component. If you mouse over the bottom of the component, you can get to the link to the PDB entry you are presently looking at, as well as you can see the UniProt residues which are mapped to this PDB entry, as well as the coverage of the protein. You can navigate among different segments of the protein sequence which are covered by PDB chains using either arrows provided or by clicking on those small gray rectangles. The rectangle in blue color is always the presently displayed chain. If you click on a different rectangle, the view will change. You can also click on the image to display 3D interactive view, where you can inspect the structure of the protein into greater detail.
We have more recently introduced a new superimposition feature that allows you to view superimposed structures, as well as a download option that allows you to batch download files for a PDBe-KB entry. To highlight the superimposition, we're going to go to this PDBe-KB page for protein glutamine gamma, glutamyl transferase 2. If we want to view the superimposition, you can click the blue button below this widget on the right to view all the structural clusters for the segment that is displayed. In this case, only one segment. And then for that segment, this will show you the clusters of those structures. Initially, it will only show you the representative structures for each one of those clusters. For example, if I highlight over these, you'll see that you have a representative for cluster 1 and a representative for cluster 2. You can also toggle on all of the other chains in the cluster. So if you want to visualize all of the chains in cluster 1, as you can see here, we're clicking to show all those representatives and removing the one from cluster 2. So you can see how well these align, if there are any certain local dissimilarities. You can also do that more globally by clicking all or none and applying, and that will show you either all of the structures from a particular cluster, and you can then hide all of the structures for another cluster as well. So this allows you to explore the different conformations that are found for a particular segment and explore the differences and variations between these. So in cases where there are multiple segments, such as this example here, it's DNA methyltransferase, which has 2 segments as shown on the right, you can view all the structural clusters from this button underneath the Structures icon. This again opens up the structural alignment, and you're able to toggle between different segments to highlight the clusters within each of these. So if you go to the Select Segment option, I can instead select Segment 2, and this will now show me the clusters for that particular segment of the sequence. I'm going to show you now how to view all the ligands bound to a specific protein through the KB pages, in this case looking at the 3C-like proteinase from COVID-19. So if you go to this button and click View All Ligands, this will open up the Molstar viewer, which displays all the ligands that are found bound to this specific protein, this segment of the protein. I'm going to speed things up a little bit just to improve the loading speed for all of these ligands, because it's loading hundreds of ligands all at once here. Once this is finished, you can see in pink all the different ligands that are found bound to this structure across the whole of the PDB. Now in this case we have 2 clusters. Vast majority of these are in cluster 1. So just to improve clarity, we can hide all the ones from cluster 2, just display cluster 1. Now on the right hand side, it displays all the different ligands that are found bound and how many of those across all the PDB. So we can hide all of these to begin with, start with a blank slate, and begin viewing specific ones and see how these overlap, where they are found in the binding site. So we do this for a few here. We can then zoom in and have a little bit of a closer look at how they're bound. If you click on individual ones, it will actually display the binding site for that particular ligand, and you can see where all the residues around interact with that ligand in this view. You can also use the menu on the left-hand side to hide individual structures by entry ID, and also to show additional ones here. So rather than by individual ligands, this is actually by the entries themselves. Here I'm going to show you how you can download files related to a specific protein in the PDBe-KB aggregated views. So if you click on this download button underneath Structures, this offers you a selection of different file download options that you can then download to your computer. So you will be able to download every single one of these files from each entry for this particular protein. And if you click the download button, it will download these all as one zipped file. You can also download all the files that contain ligands, so all entries containing ligands. So in this case, there are 156 PDB entries that in total contain 144 different ligands. Again, you have all the same options to download. You can also download all entries with interaction data. And finally, you can also download all the entries from similar proteins. So that's from our section of 90% similarity. You can download all those 90% similar files as well. In the Ligands and Environments section, you also have the option to download files that contain a specific ligand. In this case, we click the download button for U0M, and we can download the entry that contains that ligand. In the case of SV6, there are actually 3 entries, and we can download all of those entries for that particular ligand.